Today we're talking to Michelle Holman, who is a New Zealand author, and she is going to be talking with us about her book Barefoot, which I believe is out on 1st of November 2010. Is that right, Michelle?
That's right, Gracie, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about Barefoot?
Oh, I've been asked very often about Barefoot or something like this, because Barefoot is the next book that follows on from Bonkers, my very first book. And I've often been asked by people, they wanted to know what happened to Dan and Lisa, did they have their baby? And people actually really took the Jackson family and the Brogan family to heart, which was lovely for me. So I actually started writing another book last year, you know how we write a year in advance. And so I got started on this book that I was really passionate about and I was looking forward to writing. And something really interesting happened, which has happened to me before, but not quite as profoundly as it did this time. And I was trotting along writing this book, and it was going okay, but I had these Sherry and Glenn from Barefoot kept chatting in my head, and they went on, and they got louder and louder, to the point in the end that I just gave up writing the other book, because I had to sit down and write their story. It was almost like they were just banging on the door saying, it's our time, we're here and we're not going away till you put it on paper.
Do you often have that sort of thing happen, where characters tell you what they want?
I know with characters, I know I've got characters, and I know you've said the same thing, Gracie. I know I've got characters all got into their skins when they're talking. There's so much dialogue going on inside my head that some of it I actually have to cut some of it out. I just know them. I've never, so it happened a bit similarly with Glenn and Sherry, but the difference was that they were just so loud. They were so determined. They wouldn't go away. And I just realised this was their time. Like, books have a time, I've come to realise that. Stories have a certain time when it's just that's the time they've got to be written, or you're at the right point to write them. And that's what happened last year. So I just gave up. I gave up. The other book's been put away and I will write it sometime. But this was the time for Barefoot, so I just sat down and I wrote it, and yeah, I'm really happy with it. Yeah.
Do you think the loudness of the characters talking to you is because you are actually doing a book, because you haven't done a book of secondary characters before, have you? And these are secondary characters that have been brought through to be heroes and heroines in their own book. So do you think it was because you knew them so well, sort of, to begin with?
It certainly helped. It was like going back to meet old friends. I knew the family. I know the Jackson family. I know the Brogan family. There was obviously Dan and Lisa. You know, I always knew what had happened to them, but it was nice to actually be able to tell a little bit of what had happened to them, and then to put them. They've sort of become the elder statesmen in a sense, because their story's been told and they're carrying on with their lives. But it was that opportunity to start bringing out all these other things, like it was Glenn and Sherry's turn. But there's still like Brian and Jill, Lisa and Sherry and their brother Ben's parents. There was Molly and Cal, who are the parents of Dan and Glenn. So it was neat being able to go back and meet these old people again. It's like getting together at Christmas. You go, I haven't seen you for ages, but there they were. So that was lovely. Probably it helped in a sense that I knew the foundation of this family. I knew the moral underpinning of this family, their beliefs, what mattered to them, the things they laughed at. It was all there, so it was good.
So it was easier to write than actually having to start all over from the beginning?
It was easier in some ways, but in others, of course, there was the backstory. I had to weave that in. Now that's quite an art, and that's something that I'm still learning, and that can be quite challenging. So it was really quite neat for me to do this, because it was another thing I had to actually sit down and hopefully another skill set.
You have a theme in Barefoot that you explore. Sherry's a cop, and this theme comes from her background, her job. Can you explain a little bit about what this theme is? Sherry works in a family violence unit. She's a detective constable in a family violence unit, and these are units that have been specifically set up to deal with domestic violence, domestic abuse within the family. And that's something that I feel quite passionately about. My background as a nurse, particularly working in emergency department nursing, we would see these women come in,
And you actually don't have to be in hospital to see these women. They're walking around your streets. They're in your community. They might be your neighbours, and quite often you know nothing about it. Don't always assume that you're going to hear lots of noise and see the bruises for them to be there. These women and the kids too are adept at hiding this, at concealing things. So something that I look back at my nursing career, and I know there were women I missed and the women that I did actually recognise, and it's a duty to actually try and help those women because they're so trapped. So Sherry being a cop, and particularly the kind of person she is, she's a very strong woman. I thought, yeah, that's what she would have gone and done. And I did some fabulous workshops when I was nursing, actually with some of the workers from the Women's Refuge, and also I had a fabulous day with a detective sergeant at Henderson Police Station in Auckland, her name is Kelly Ferrant-Alofa. And Kelly spent the day with me and just talked. She's a detective sergeant, the head of the family violence unit there, and she was just superb. And it was just really neat to be able to wind that in, because I just knew as soon as I met Kelly, I thought, oh, this is what Sherry would do. I just know that's what Sherry would do.
How do you deal with something like this as a writer? Because it is
it's a very serious issue,
difficult subject to handle. And as you say, you write romantic comedy. So how do you make this comedic?
It's obviously because it's not funny, and so there's no way obviously that you present that in a funny light, because it's impossible, and I wouldn't do it obviously. Well, I think the important thing to realise is, and most people will, I think, acknowledge the fact that life, it's not straightforward, it's not black and white, that in the midst of tragedy you will have not exactly light-hearted moments, but humour and tragedy sit alongside one another, and that's the resilience of the human spirit, and that's something I really acknowledge about those women I saw. And so when I was writing it, it is Barefoot. I still think it's a funny book, because they're at loggerheads. Glenn and Sherry are at loggerheads. Glenn's in a very bad spot because he's been a very successful shooting guard in the NBA. He's a professional basketballer. He suddenly hurts his knee and he's out. He has to retire. He retires younger than he expected to. His world has come to an end.
So he wasn't ready for that?
No, he's at a loose end. He doesn't actually know who or what he is anymore. And he's come up against this woman who has got, she's focused, she's studying, she's got plans, she wants to become a detective sergeant, she's on a career trajectory. And he's come up against someone very positive and very focused when he's at a bit of a loose end. And for him, it's actually putting those two things together. For a start, they go, they lock heads. And so there was that funny side of it, and then there's also winding in amongst it this issue that she's dealing with these families that's got terrible things happening in their home life. I don't think there actually has to be an issue. I don't think you can just say if you're writing a funny book, it's all funny. If you're writing a tragic book, it's all tragic. That's just not the way I write, because that's not the way life is.
No. So you've done this is the Jackson family. That's Lisa, who's in Bonkers, Sherry, who's in Barefoot. But there's a brother, Ben, isn't there? Are you going to do Ben's book?
Yeah, there will be. Ben comes back into it. I mean, Ben is Sherry's absolute who pillar. She leans on him. He's the coolest guy, Ben. He's very laid back. But there will be a story for Ben. I don't know when. No doubt Ben will come knocking at some point and yell in my ear until I'll write that book. But I do have that planned, and but that will be the last one. There was always going to be 3 books. When I started Bonkers, always in my mind I had, there was going to be a book for Sherry and a book for Ben, certainly by the time I finished Bonkers, because I got to know those 2 characters and I just thought, I knew there were stories for them. And so there will be. And I'm looking forward to writing Ben's one.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate talking to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Gracie.
Michelle's books are available from all good bookstores. To purchase online, visit her books page at www.michelleholman.com.